Up next, PwC Director Laila Kakar presents AI-powered strategy in the age of innovation. This talk dives into how AI can enhance strategic decision-making, drive innovation, and complement human expertise. Through real-world case studies, Laila will explore how businesses can align with AI initiatives with long-term goals. Please welcome Laila Kakar.
Perfect. Okay, good afternoon all. Today I would like to discuss the topic of AI-powered strategy in the age of innovation. But before I kick off with the presentation, I'd like to get a very brief moment to formally introduce myself. I'm Laila Kakar, Director of AI and Machine Learning with PwC. And today I would like to discuss this topic of AI strategy by diving into the next three, let's say, aspects of AI and strategy. The very first one is, how is AI reshaping decision-making and innovation? Second thing would be, how can AI align with your business objectives in order to get measurable impact? And hopefully at the end, a Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. I think we have a lot of very deep dive conversations of AI and how you can use it and maybe more technical ones. But if we start very high level, what is actually AI? Because there might be some people in the audience that don't necessarily have that very technical background. So that's what I want to start out with and what the starting point is. So let's maybe start off with, what is AI? So AI is a specific branch within computer science that focuses on tasks that you would typically require human intelligence for. So let's dissect that, right? What do we mean when we say tasks that require human intelligence? What exactly does that cover? So think about sense, think, and action. Whenever we talk about sense, right? Can AI smell, feel, respond to gestures, or even interface with the brain? And what are these aspects when we're talking about it? There are a couple of things that come to mind, right? The first one is natural language. Then we have computer vision, and we have audio and speech. Think. What do we mean when we are talking about think? How can AI help us with that? Well, one of the major things that AI is very valuable in is that it supports with decision making. And how does it support with decision making? It makes decisions faster, more cheaply, more accurately, and in a shorter time frame than we probably humans can do. And I think the last point of action is something probably we're all very familiar with. And it's something that we can visualize when we talk about it, because it's more grasping, right? When we talk about action, we're talking about robotics, for example, or AI agents, which was mentioned before. These are things that we're all a lot more familiar with. So now that we have a very clear understanding of AI in general, let's go a little bit more into detail in all these aspects that are covered within AI. And all these, let's say, buzzwords. Okay. AI is the biggest form that we are talking about, and it encompasses many of other buzzwords or words that you have used or have heard of, right? I would say machine learning is the next one. That is a word that is being used a lot. So what exactly is machine learning? It is a subset of AI that focuses on processing large sets of data and to learn from it and improve upon it for decision making. In easier words, it means you just give it a bunch of data, a lot of data, and you tell it, learn from it, and tell me whatever you're seeing. That's it. Deep learning. What's deep learning? I think I've heard that buzzword in one of the other presentations too. It sounds like a very fancy word and a very technical concept, but if I would tell you that all of you guys are familiar with that process, without you even being aware of it, you listening to me is using some sort of a form of deep learning, it's because it's mimicking whatever is in your brains. It uses or processes data by using layers of neural networks for your decision making. So in your brains, you have networks of your neurons that are processing information, and that's how you come up to your decision. So although the concept itself is maybe very technical, we are all very familiar with it because it's mimicking whatever we know that's happening in our brains already. And then the very last concept, which is Gen AI, and I would think that's the biggest buzzword as of now, right? What exactly is Gen AI? I think we are all using it with ChatGPT, Copilot, but what exactly is the definition of Gen AI itself? Well, it uses prompts, which again is a very fancy word of you just typing in your question in ChatGPT, which technically is a prompt, to create or to adjust text, images, videos by using large language models. So I hope that now we all have a very clear understanding of what all of these fancy terminology is and an easy understanding of what it technically all can do. Perfect. Okay. And why is AI such a hot topic at the moment, right? Because it has an enormous increase, an enormous growth, and it has also been impacting a lot of industries and tech in general. Why is that? Why is the growth so much? And what do we mention when we are talking about the growth itself? Let's look at some of these stats that AI has been influencing, right? We're talking about more than 1,500 new Gen AI and ML tools that are in the market nowadays. We're talking about 10 plus new LLMs every week. More than 100 and plus open source projects every month. And more than 30% of increase in AI domain papers in the last couple of 2 years. What gives even more of an indication is that a lot of governments or a lot of countries are heavy investing in GPUs, and GPUs are used to process AI, such as UAE, KSA, UK. And lastly, we also see a huge increase in AI startups. I think some of the startup founders are already talking here, and we're talking about more than 100 and plus every month. Perfect. So now that we have a clear understanding of what AI is, we see that it's growing, so something is going on. How can we benefit from it, right? Because that's the real question. How can we use it for our decision making? Because at the end of the day, just introducing AI for a company is not the goal itself, right? Just saying that, oh, we are having AI doesn't really help you. The thing is, how can you use AI and why is it so helpful? Let's dive into that a little bit more. So based on our latest PwC survey, we got the following numbers of CEOs that are saying that they actually have benefited from AI. Let's look at a couple of these numbers. 56% of CEOs are saying that Gen AI has resulted into efficiencies, and because of that, their employees can spend their time more efficiently, which is a big number if you think about it. 32% of CEOs are reported increased revenue, and 34% have reported increased profitability, all by implementing AI. Lastly, 34% of CEOs have claimed that they have already integrated AI in their products and services. Well, this sounds all very good, but why are they doing that, right? They're good numbers, but what's the reason behind it? How can AI actually help you now that we understand what AI is? Well, I think in some of these quotations we also saw it, or one in the survey itself, and that is that you can improve your efficiency, or you can enhance your experience. You can reduce your cost, and you can make decisions faster. And a very important one that's not being mentioned a lot is that you can increase your compliance. All of these factors are, name a company, would be important to them. At least one of these factors. They would say that, yeah, works for me. I will be willing to look into implementing AI in my business. Let's say you're at that point. You say, works for me, understand what AI is, let's try to implement it. What's the next step you need to focus on, right? That's what actually is the capability of AI, because that's an important thing. Before you start to introduce AI, you need to understand how it can help you. What is the exact capability that you're trying to get? I think most of us are probably familiar with many of the capabilities. For example, summarization. A simple thing is, if you have a very big bunch of text and you just want to get a very quick summary, AI can help you out with that. Then we have deep retrieval. And deep retrieval is if you really want to focus on a specific element that you want to find. from the large amount of text that you're having. The next one would be transformation. Everybody has probably also seen an example of that, and that's when you want to translate, for example, text. You can consider that as transformation. And large language models can help you out with that. We have augmentation. You might think that you have not encountered augmentation, but I'm pretty sure you have. Whenever you're writing a text message on your phone and you get autocomplete, that's considered augmentation. And large language models are helping out with that. We have chat. I can skip that one because who nowadays has not chatted with a chatbot? And we have creation. And creation is, again, whenever you use a prompt, which is, again, a fancy word of just a question or a request that you have, by creating either video, text, etc., something that's not there yet, and you want to create it newly from scratch. Perfect. Now that we know what the capabilities are, what has been happening in the market, or what are we seeing? There are so many examples that we can never really focus on all of them, but let's select a bunch of them to get an idea, to see that what's happening in the market and how are other companies or sectors even using it, right? Let's start out with the government services. One of the main things is, for example, that you want to improve their experience. Remember what we just mentioned, enhancing an experience? This can be one of the major things for them. When we are looking into employee experience, we can, for example, have intelligent recruitment. This could cover either cost reduction, this can cover faster decision making. So again, a couple of these points are being covered here. When we look into industry-specific use cases, let's say procurement and supply chain, we can think about, let's use a Gen AI model to classify my spend data. And once it has classified my spend data and I know what I'm spending, let's create a predictive model with whatever information I have of the market of how my demand will change. And this again will also focus on your operational efficiency, because if I can make predictions, I can anticipate on it, I can be proactive about it. Okay, so let's say a company wants to introduce AI. What are these phases or levels that they can do at it, right? Let's start out with the very first one at the bottom. That's AI augmentation. What's the phase when a company is in this specific era? We will say that the employees have a very good understanding on how they can use AI, right? And they know that exactly at which point, how they should introduce it to work more efficiently, right? That's the very first phase that you can be in. The second phase would be AI automation. And that means that the employees are also aware of it, but most of the tasks are already automated. So they don't have to proactively think about it and say, oh, now I have to introduce it, right? It has already been introduced and they know how to handle it. The very last stage would be AI at core. And that means for all your critical decision making, you have somehow incorporated AI and it provides you support for your decision making. And that will be the end level where you would want to get in, because it means that your employees are very comfortable with understanding how AI can help, and they're also comfortable with the interpretation of whatever insights they're receiving. Okay, now that we have covered all of that, how do I even get started, right? Because I think most companies, when you tell them all of this, they have an understanding of what AI is, how it can help them, what the capabilities are, they're like, and now what? How do I get started? What is really important to understand is that you identify your piece of the pie and that you know how it can benefit you, meaning that don't start with trying to cover everything, right? That doesn't make sense. You have a very clear set of business goals. Which one of those business goals can you align with AI, or can AI support you out with? And then the next part would be, and I think that's missed a lot, and it was mentioned in one of the presentations before too, is before you go to your development team and you tell them, oh, this is what I want to get solved, you need to have a very clear understanding of what is it that you want to get solved. It's not the issue or the problem, your use case is never, I want an AI model. No, no, no. You want to solve a business objective that you have. And it's very important that you communicate that clearly to your technical team. Why? Because you don't want to build a Ferrari if it's not necessary, right? You don't want to make huge investments if it can be done in a more easy way. And that is something that's being missed a lot. Just because AI sounds like a very buzzword and a nice thing, and you can say, oh, I introduced AI, it isn't always necessary, and you might not have found a very good use case. It might be as simple as just an automation without really needing intelligence, which is fine too, because it has a lot of benefits, but the team that does the development needs to be aware of that. And then the next thing, which is important too, is by doing that, you need to have a very good understanding of what your ROI is. And what is your ROI actually, right? How do we look at it? Your ROI is not linked to your AI model. Your ROI is linked to whatever you're trying to improve. And that's a very important thing. So start out with your business objective, and then your ROI definition is very easy too. And then at the end, I will always say, start small, scale up fast. Don't try to come up with the most advanced and cover everything that's out there. No, start out with a smaller use case and then build upon that. The agility is very important in developing your solutions too. So now let's focus on the very first part, right? When I try to figure out what my use case is, what is the way to go about it? There are two ways. You can go bottom up or top down. Top down means that I look at my sector, I look at my business function, and I try to figure out what's already been done. It's not, AI is not that new, or machine learning is not that new. You can find use cases that have been done and have been proven to be successful. So that's an angle that you can start out with. Look at those successful use cases and then figure out, is this relevant to me? Is this actually also something that I'm struggling out with, right? Or you can go bottom up, meaning that there might be some processes that you have already identified where you spot opportunities, right? A great example of this is, for example, if you are seeing that for certain processes or business decisions, you're lacking information, and now you're taking a lot of time to gather that information from all sorts of sources, and you need to make some predictions, and you need to do some data manipulation, and you still don't really get the answer, then that might be something you can look into. I would say lastly, what's very important before you start out with is that you have a framework, a robust framework. Because most of the time we get the ground running and we skip this part. And then later on we figure out that, wait a minute, we have a solution, but we don't really have a framework, which is not the way to go about it. So save yourself a lot of time, start out with your framework. What do I mean with a framework, right? There are some pillars in your framework that you need to cover as a company. The first one is, what is your policy and regulation and your data ethics, right? Before you even start to build anything, that's your very starting point that you need to have and you need to have covered. Once you have that, there are some other things that are very important that you need to take into account, such as your compliance and your risk management. These are main factors that you need to take into account before even developing anything or even introducing a solution. Then another very important point, and this was mentioned before too, is that you ensure that your solution is robust and that it's sustainable. Because what you don't want to is that you invest a lot in it and then your solution is no longer working because of minor changes. Lastly, the thing that you need to take into account too is validation and monitoring. What I like to emphasize is that building your AI solution is not a one-time thing. Like an ERP implementation. You have implemented it and that's it. It's good. We have a solution. No, it's an ongoing journey. You need to keep monitoring it. You need to keep improving it, enhancing it, building on top of it. Once you take that into account and you have a very robust framework that can withstand changes, you have taken all of it into account, I am convinced that by introducing AI, I would say the benefits of it will be endless. Thank you. In case there are any questions. Yes, go ahead.
I'll start with a simple one. You showed us some numbers and surveys and so on.
Yes.
What is the source?
A PwC global survey. I can give you the details.
If you please.
Yes.
From your experience, what are the top 2 challenges you face in applying AI?
Data. I would say a lot of data issues because either it's data quality or data availability. It all starts with data. And then the next thing would be adoption. A lot of times they will forget that there is a whole transformation involved in it too. You need to ensure that it goes hand to hand with how your people work. So it's incorporated into your processes, into your decision making. There's a whole framework for it. So it's not a standalone thing, such as just introducing a simple automation or a simple system. It comes with a whole lot of other things that are related to digital transformation in general.
Do we have something we can say the fastest adoption rate in a region by region, like in Europe more or in East more?
I don't have the numbers, but I would say it's per industry. Some industries are a lot more comfortable with data in general, right? So if you have a more technical company, of course that adoption will go faster because the people already in it are comfortable with the concept of using technology and the interpretation of technology. If you have some industry that are lacking that and they're not that data savvy, yeah, it will require a lot more efforts in order to get them there. And you might not start out with AI, you need to start out a few steps before that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions for us?
I think I have a question there. I think I dodged your question.
So, yes, I'm actually concerned about the same slide because there are other reports that call out the huge percentage of failures of POCs in AI on production. So having such large percentages of companies realizing growth in revenues or profits, given the very high rates of failures of POCs on production, how did these people circumvent these risks, avoid these failures on production?
That's a very good thing, and I would say framework. I will go back to the framework. If you start out with really having a solid framework and understanding on how you want to use it, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, yes. I agree with that. Based on the numbers itself, I can share again the survey with you, but I think the major fallback or the bottleneck that they will face is because there's not a framework in place, right? It's a very fancy word to say I've introduced AI, and I think the focus is there instead of, but it goes hand in hand with a lot of other things, like is your data quality there, right? Is there a digital transformation in general? Do you have a policy when it comes to data and to introducing AI solutions in general? So I think if that framework is not there, that solid foundation, it will be very difficult for you to have a successful implementation of using AI in any sort of way.
May I have a say in this? Actually, it's my field of expertise.
Mhm.
Let me tell you that the first, the biggest obstacle is the leadership. So the support on the top level. And actually, this is why I developed this program to educate them and train them about the digital transformation skills and mindset.
Perfect, and I think that goes hand in hand, right? If leadership is not aware, they would not expect a framework. If a framework is there, it means that leadership is aware of it and they needed to have a solid, let's say, policies, regulations, etc., all that comes with it.
Of course, with the management.
Exactly.
If the managers are not aware of this, they will stop everything.
Yes, yes. But then again, if you have that framework, you can push it and say that this is what we have agreed upon. Yeah. That's it? Okay. Thank you. Oh, there's more.
Okay, I just wanted to comment. When applying AI to the market, there are drawbacks when it comes to hardware, when it comes to processing power, especially in a market that's not hardware sufficient. What can you tell us about this, especially the fact that you mentioned that we have to choose a framework, okay, especially when we design what we're doing with AI?
That's a very good point. And even within the Middle East, there's a huge thing that you need to take into account too, and that is data residency, right? Most companies do not want their data to be processed outside of the country. And most big names have their data centers outside of the country. So it would mean that data in transfer, it will be processed outside of it. So this is a huge risk you need to take into account. But then again, that's why I mentioned risk management and data privacy. If you have a good understanding of that, then you need to take this into account into your solution design, right? If you only take that into account at the end, you will figure out that your ROI is not your ROI, because it will mean that probably you get to host a lot of more things instead of using the solutions that are readily available. So that's a very great point, and yes, that's definitely happening.
Thank you for your talk. I'm from the healthcare industry.
The doctor.
The doctor, yes, in the room. And I completely agree about the data quality, but until a lot of the hospitals get to use electronic medical records and have structured data, does that mean we are doomed not to be able to make use of AI until we get our data straight? Or what would your suggestion be?
No, because maybe I need to put it like this. How bad is it? Because nowadays we even have OCR, right? So even if you scan documents that are handwritten in Arabic, you can translate that into structured data that can be processed. Would it go as fast as you usually would have compared to a company that has everything in the ERP beautifully structured? No, but it's possible. It just takes a bit more of effort. So I would say even with the technology of today, specifically with the technology of today, it's definitely not a bottleneck. It's just an opportunity that might take a bit more time. That's it? Okay. Thank you.